Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Today I'm talking about yesterday's action, actually. I'm just getting around to it a little late because I had a cross country meet last night and I wanted to get to bed early. The Mavs Clippers are going on right now, and I just decided that I'd rather pump out this video than watch that game just because it's game one, and I wanted to make a Western Conference Finals preview and predictions video without watching any of the game so that I can go into it unbiased and unaffected by the current results. So I just decided that I'll make this video, and as a Bucks fan, it was not a day of action that I could miss out on. That's for sure. Um, so the Bucks did end up losing to the Heat in a really tough game. The really deciding stretch for me came in the third quarter when the Bucks were on a really big run and they were playing super well. Middleton had just knocked down a couple really huge isolation jumpers, and then he threw the lob to Lopez, and Lopez threw it down. And at that point, I believe it was tied. And Coach Bud made the decision to take out Brook Lopez, who had been playing really well, both defensively and offensively. He was forcing Bam into tough shots on defense, and on offense, he was knocking down his jumpers and just doing what we needed him to do. And for some reason, Bud just decided to take him out. And I think that Bud is a great coach, but for me, it's kind of a feel for the game problem with him, because he is just like a robot out there. He thinks that, okay, this is my rotation. I take Lopez out now. This is the time of the game he comes out, so I need to remove him from the game. But if Lopez is playing really well, just leave him out there a couple extra minutes. And then if he misses a shot or two, okay, take him out now. If he starts playing poorly on defense because he's tired, okay, take him out. But if he's playing really well and he looks really good on the court, there's just no reason to take him out there. And I noticed it so many times, on so many occasions. Obviously, Middleton and Giannis were both in a bit of foul trouble yesterday. So even if they were in a rhythm, Bud didn't have much of a choice. He kind of had to take them out. But, I mean, still, like, it's just frustrating to me that these guys get on a roll and then they can't have the chance to extend the lead because Bud is so hesitant to play them big minutes. I think that the Heat are probably a better clutch team than the Bucks are. Jimmy Butler's a better closer than anyone the Bucks have on their roster, and they're just letting the games be close, and that's not a way that this team needs to win. Giannis plays his best basketball when the Bucks are ahead. So we need to focus on getting a lead, and that means that Bud needs to play the starters more in the first half, because quite honestly, we are not getting from the bench the production that we need in order to beat this Heat team. The Heat are really good. They're deep. Obviously, we saw Derrick Jones Jr. come off the bench yesterday, and I think that his production was a bit overrated just purely based on the numbers that he produced. I didn't think he played particularly well. He just ended up blocking a couple shots, and it made his numbers look better, and it looked like he was making an impact, but really I think it was more of a product of how well his teammates were playing around him. But the Heat are really deep, and so we're going to need much better play from Connaughton and DiVincenzo. And quite honestly, this entire bubble, DiVincenzo has not looked like the same player he was before the restart. And I'm not even sure that he's a playoff player right now. Korver's defense is really lacking. Obviously, he had that key foul on Iguodala that felt like the Bucks had some momentum, and then boom, there's the flagrant, and all of a sudden the lead is back. So I just think that there's a couple adjustments there that Bud needs to make, and we also just need to get better looks on offense. I think that down the second half, like throughout the second half, we looked really good, especially on defense. Like, I saw a lot of things that I liked. We were forcing Jay Crowder to take shots. Obviously, he shot the ball pretty decent yesterday. I think he was 4 for 11 on threes. But, I mean, that's the shots that Bud's going to give up. Kelly Olynyk threes, we're going to give those up. Are there any other guys like Iguodala? Let him shoot as much as he wants. Derrick Jones Jr., if he's in the game, let him shoot. We give up three open threes, albeit, but they're to subpar shooters most of the time, and that's just a area where I think the Bucks have always done really, really well, and they have been continuing it in this series. They're giving up these threes, but they're to players that aren't great shooters. So you have to have faith that at some point those shots are just going to stop falling. Yeah. Um, like I said, Brook Lopez, Eric Bledsoe, and Chris Middleton all had really, really good games for the Bucks. They were all getting a lot of buckets for us. They all play pretty good defense, especially Bledsoe looked pretty good at the point of attack on Dragic. Obviously, Dragic still had a huge game, and he's just a really, really good shot maker. It's hard to slow him down at this point because he's just really, really hot, and he's one of the hottest players in the entire playoffs so far this year. He's getting a consistent 20 plus every single game for this team, and he's a very, very important weapon for them when he's able to give them that kind of production, just because that point guard spot is so important. And with Kendrick Nunn out there, obviously he's a decent offensive player, but he's not the weapon that Dragic can be. And if Dragic is playing this well, then it just adds another big offensive piece to this team and another thing you have to worry about if you're the team playing them and having to defend the team. So yeah, that's an area Bledsoe needs to get a bit better at the point of attack, but it was also just his first game back off of that hamstring injury, so who knows how much that was hampering his success on the defensive end of the floor. So hopefully, as he has more time to recover, the better his defense can get. On the offensive end of the ball, I think that we need to attack Tyler Hero more, as well as Dragic. Both of those two are pretty poor defenders, and I definitely think that we can take advantage of them, especially Hero. It felt like every time we were going at him on offense, whether it was George Hill, whether it was Wesley Matthews, whether it was, in a best case scenario, Middleton or Bledsoe, we were having a lot of success with that. Obviously, this guy is one of the most poised rookies I've ever seen. He looks completely unflustered playing in the second half of these huge games, and he's just a really special player, but he's a willing defender. He gives good effort on defense, but he just doesn't quite have the right feel yet, and that'll come, I believe, with more experience, because you can tell that he's giving effort, and he obviously has the body for it. He's got a long wingspan, and he's a good athlete. It's not like he's a chubby guy who has a hard time moving his feet or anything. It's just that feel, and I think that that'll come for him. But on offense, he's knocking down those shots. And he's making good passes. I think that in this series, he's probably the best option for them to have handling the ball in the pick and roll with Bam setting the screen, just because he's such a big threat, taking shots off the dribble. And there's really no other player in this offense who can provide that kind of weapon. Although, as I say that, I'm thinking of Goran Dragic and all that he's done to the Bucks in these past few games. So maybe I'm wrong about that there, and he's the second best option. But with Dragic on the bench, he looks like he's been the guy with the ball in his hands a lot of the time. And as we saw yesterday, when he made that great move, using his body to keep Lopez from blocking the shot or even really contesting it, and just had a really excellent finish. This guy's not all just shooting. He's got a really good pull-up J. Catch and shoot, he's lights out, but he also has a really good game getting into the paint, and that's where he is clearly more valuable than Duncan Robinson. It's not just the fact that he's 6.5 years younger than Duncan. He also just is more of a weapon going to the rim, and the defense isn't quite there yet, but he also has more defensive potential than Duncan does. Although Duncan is definitely an effort guy, he tries his hardest. He's just not a good enough athlete to defend well on the perimeter, but and in the post, he's completely mismatched. If he was down there with Brook or Giannis, every time the Bucks took advantage of that by just going right at him, and he's just not very strong. He's a little guy. He couldn't guard either of those guys in the low post, so that's what makes Hero a bit better, just because he's got the height and length that he can contest. Obviously, he needs to get stronger. That'll also help the defense. But as of right now, he's someone that the Bucks can attack, especially when he's on Middleton or Bledsoe. I just want the Bucks to be attacking that matchup every single time. Um, let's see. Bledsoe in his return looked pretty good. He got to the rim a bunch of times and was just bringing that extra piece of the offense back that the Bucks really need, and that consistent penetrator who can open up looks for the three-point shooters. Because in case you haven't noticed, these guys really are not great three-point shooters. They were just looked much better than they were because they were getting wide open shots all season due to how good Giannis was. But Bam is doing a really good job on Giannis so far in this series. So when Giannis can't produce these kind of shots for these guys, they're just being forced to take more heavily contested looks, and they have not been going in at a high rate at all in this series. I saw that Pat Connaughton has played something along the lines of 40 to 45 minutes in this series, I think it was. I think it was 37 minutes, and he has 2 points. I mean, come on, buddy. I think Pat Connaughton's a great player. He's the best cutter the Bucks have. He's a good perimeter defender. He hustles. He's a pretty good rebounder for a guy his size. I think he's only about 6'4", 6'5". But come on, pal. You got to start hitting some of your shots. That's where Korver has the advantage, but obviously he's not great on the defensive end, although he did have a really huge defensive play on that Butler trap that forced the turnover where Lopez got that layup. And I really think that should have been an and one. I think Lopez got hacked there, and they missed out on a call. The officiating kind of gave me a headache down the line. I don't know that they got blatantly blew any calls, but I just think they should have swallowed their whistles a little bit. And I think that the refs in the Thunder Rockets game did a pretty good job of that. Down the stretch when the players were trying to draw fouls and flop a little bit, they swallowed their whistles and they just let them play ball. And I think that that's a really good job by the officials, and I'm glad they did that, and I wish that we would have seen a bit more of that in the earlier game. Anything else I want to talk about from this game? George Hill played pretty well. Obviously off the bench, he's the sixth man, and we need that kind of production from him every night. Maybe it's not 14 points, maybe it's 8 points and 5 or 6 assists, but he's a really key component of our offense just because he's probably the fifth best scorer, depending on where you value Matthews scoring, but clearly Wesley Matthews isn't out there to be a scorer. He's out there to be the best possible defensive option on Jimmy Butler. And don't even get me started on Wesley Matthews guarding Jimmy Butler. He did a beautiful job yesterday. He moves his feet. He uses his body to be physical and prevent Jimmy from getting the spots he wants to get to. And he's just a really, really good defender, and I'm just, as a Bucks fan who's been watching him all season, I'm glad to see how well he's playing, and it makes me so angry to hear all these people saying, yeah, the Bucks need to put Giannis on Jimmy. Bucks need to put Giannis on Jimmy. Like, the national media as a whole does not watch the Bucks every game like us Bucks fans do. We know that Wesley Matthews is a really, really good defender, and the Bucks need Giannis to be in that role that he's played all season, kind of the Anthony Davis role, I heard somebody call it, where he's not necessarily guarding the best player on the other team, but he's just able to do so much as a helper. He's all over the court, and he just does so much in helping the Bucks win on defense that I wouldn't want to take it away by having him on ball all the time. So I definitely think that the matchup is fine. Keep putting Wesley Matthews on him and try to match up Wesley Matthews' minutes as close as possible to Jimmy's, because nobody else seems to be doing nearly as good of a job on Jimmy as Wesley is. On to the Thunder Rockets game. Kind of bummed to see this Thunder team go home. They were really, really fun this season. Seeing CP3 really have a great run, especially in this series. Game 6, he was so fun to watch, and in this game even, he hit a few really big threes in the fourth quarter, and he's one of the greatest clutch players of my time, and it's so fun to watch him hit these, whether it's the mid-range fadeaway or the three-point pull-up. He's just a special player, and I hope that he can keep playing like this well into his 30s. well into his upper 30s, I guess. He's already 35. Lou Dort exploded for a huge game yesterday, and that was so fun to see. This guy's been working his butt off all series on defense, and his offense has just been atrocious. He hasn't been getting his shots to fall, and finally in Game 7, they started going in. He had a 30 bomb. Who would have thought? Lou Dort. What a game from the guy. He really kept them in it just by knocking down those shots. The Rockets, excuse me, were giving him those shots all series, and he did a great job knocking them down in Game 7, and unfortunately it just wasn't quite enough. I don't think Billy Donovan got Darius Bazley into the game enough. I think that Darius was a better option than Steven Adams on the court against the Rockets, and I just think that he was very underutilized, and I wish he would have been out there more. Steven Adams just kind of similar to Paul Millsap in the Nuggets Jazz series. He just looks gassed. He's old. He's older, or he's not even that old. He's what, 26, 27? He's really not old at all. He just feels like he's been in the league forever, but he just didn't look good at all in this series. Rocco stayed hot, and that's huge for the Rockets. If he can be that really, really good third or fourth option, depending on how well Eric Gordon's playing. And Eric Gordon also had a big game. So Rocco and Eric Gordon having great games while Westbrook and Harden struggle. Although Westbrook did play a lot better in the second half yesterday. But Rocco and Eric Gordon playing like that makes this team really scary. And as I'll talk about in my Western Conference semifinals preview, I think they can really give the Lakers a run. OKC turned the ball over a lot, and that was really killed them. Giving up those fast break, easy points to the Rockets. Without all those turnovers, I believe the Thunder win this game. Schroeder had a really good series. He just seems to make all his tough shots. He's my vote for Sixth Man of the Year. Oh, and speaking of awards, I don't think I ever talked about this, but Brandon Ingram won Most Improved. I think Jason Tatum should have won that award because he just... Most Improved, he improved so much throughout the season. I mean, his numbers already took a step forward from last year to this year, but from the beginning of this year to the end of this year, he was a completely different player, and so I just think he was the perfect candidate for Most Improved Player. But I think Brandon Ingram was also quite deserving. He took a huge step forward, going from being a guy who people didn't know if he was gonna end up working out as a future above average starter in the league to a legit all-star, and it's only his fourth season, I think, so there's a lot of room for him to grow still, and maybe he can reach that sky-high potential that people saw from him coming out of Duke, that Kevin Durant-like game. Obviously, he'll never be on Kevin Durant's level, but maybe he can be a light version of Kevin Durant, and I don't think anyone will be complaining about that. Jeff Green is another guy with Rocco and Eric Gordon. If he's hitting big shots and playing well for them on defense, changes the complexion for this team. And I really, really think that it's going to be a great series between them and the Lakers. I can't wait to see it. Although I think Dennis Schroeder may have accidentally pointed out a way for the Lakers to have a big advantage in this series. In the fourth quarter, after he was called for a foul, he slapped the ball away from Russell Westbrook, and Russ reacted by screaming at him and screaming at the ref and throwing a big temper tantrum. So it would not surprise me at all to see the Lakers try to get Russ emotional. Yeah, that's about it for me today. Two fun games. I was really rooting for the team that lost in both of them, but still a lot of fun. Still a really good basketball. I think I'll be making my Western Conference semifinals preview and predictions right after this video. So, as usual, ladies and gentlemen, I will see you all again very soon.